Can you see my screen share, Simeon?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. So my name is Paul Baker. I work at Motorsbox and engineering manager there, and I've been heading up this BizOps framework work stream. And I'm actually pretty excited today because I think we've hit a really good milestone and we've got something really nice to show. And I just can't wait to show it to you. So I thought we could start this talkback by just reviewing what we managed to achieve, what we set out on the last PI, and how things changed, because they did a little bit. So let's look at the 4 epics that we set up. The first one was as a compliance officer wanting to be able to perform an audit on the logs that are available. This is slightly different to audit logs. And in fact, we've been able to do that by configuring the Oathkeeper logs in such a way that we have our tokens, which can be tracked back to a user. So in fact, we've got now a full audit of every user activity on the platform as for all the API calls that have been protected in the backend. So that's great, one tick down. The second one is this sort of want to combine the financial portal and the BizOps framework together. And in fact, we have done this, although we did it differently to the way that we specified it here. We did in a better way. What we've done is we've taken the financial portal functionality and we built that into the BizOps framework. So now those financial portal functional controls are sitting as micro front ends that are imported into the BizOps framework. And we're now calling this financial portal version 3, which is what I'm going to be demonstrating a little bit later. So a second tick. Then as hub operators, I'd like to enforce make a checker. So security policy. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can enforce a make a checker. So to be clear, we've specified this as a segregation of duty security policy that is enforced by the RBack. And this we built into the system, and this is maybe a bit more than just make a checker. It allows you to separate functions of audit from operations as necessary, and is a really powerful mechanism. And I've got a slide where I'll discuss this in a little bit more detail. So tick number 3. Then the last one is, as an infrastructure engineer, you would like to be able to deploy this using an ISC, and in fact, right from the beginning, our plan was to build this into ISC. We have completed that process, and I'll be performing the demonstration on how you can, in fact, tweak the permissions and the rules and permissions associated with roles through the ISC and the mechanism around that. It's a good demonstration. Okay, then how do we define success? We said, well, that we wanted it in production somewhere. Well, we didn't quite make production, but what we do have is we've got it in the UAT environment for WinePay, which is one step away from production. So half tick there. Okay. Then the next other couple of points was about community collaboration and documentation and building micro front ends and supporting APIs. We haven't really made much progress there, but I think that's just a matter of time. Once this is out there and in an environment where people can use it, we're going to have people contributing to it, especially the people who need that functionality. So I think that's a good alignment of where we headed, but we didn't quite meet that. Then demonstration of make a checker segregation duties RBack. We've got that demonstration. Pick positive and negative tests. We've got that too, and documentation around how to update security policy changes. Well, I'll give a demonstration of that using the ISC. So next, I think let's jump into the demonstration. So well, before I've got a recorded video that I would like to play. But at a high level, let me just, there's quite a lot that we're trying to explain. So let me summarize at a high level what we're trying to do. The first part of the demonstration is really about tracing a transfer, and the importance of this is it really provides really good visualization at the hub of what's going on where the transfers are, and also some drill down functionality that allows you to really look under the hood of Mojaloop and see what's going on, really starting from a dashboard all the way down through. So it's quite easy to get that, and I think it's a very empowering method of being able to control operations at home. Then next is the reconciliation process, and this is the sort of financial provision 2 functionality that's been imported, and really that's around controlling your permissions and the deferred net settlement process and how they complete along with the reports and the controls associated with those reports. And then the third part of this is the RBack, and this is around authorization and authentication. And really there's really 2 main aspects of this. The first one is assignment of roles to users and how that restricts participants, and then we look at how those standard roles have been configured and designed, and how those permissions associated with those rules can be controlled through the ISE integration. So I think the next thing to do would be to start that demonstration. So let me just get that video going. Hold on a sec. Can everyone see that, Simeon?
Not able to yet.
Everyone, can you?
We're seeing the slides.
Also, and don't forget to share your computer sound.
Okay, let me do that quickly. I'm glad I checked.
Yep, we can see the video now.
Great. Computer sound. Here we go. My name is Paul Baker, and I've been heading up the BizOps framework workstream, and I work for Motorsbox as engineering manager. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of the financial portal version 3. So let me start by sharing my screen. So the first thing that happens when you go to the financial portal version 3 is you redirected to log in to your identity server, which in this case is WSO2. So I log in there, and then I get the authentication authorization that has been assigned to me. So let me start by showing you the trace transfer functionality. I just want to work through the functionality that we have got inside the BizOps framework. So if I have a look at all the transfers that we received in the last month, we've got 79 in total that were successful, 9 that had errors associated with them. And then we got a high-level dashboard here, which summarizes per currency, per payer, or payee DFSB. This is interactive, so that you can use it to update the view we have at the bottom. Then shows the list of detailed transfers associated with the filters that you've got in place. Let me jump into looking at some details. So let's go to details of transfer. If we have a look at one of these successful transfers, there's a lot of information here about that transfer, which is accessible. But in addition to that, we've also got a series of logged Kafka events that have been stored and attached to this particular transfer and are accessible through this UI. For instance, we've got all the quote events, we've got events associated with the transfer, and we've got events associated with settlement that have been all linked and associated to this particular transfer. So let me jump quickly to the Mojo 103, some Mojo 103 screenshots. What I've done here is I've This is a functional view or a transfer showing the two main phases of a transfer, and basically the prepare and the fulfillment phase. What I've done here is I've labeled with the yellow star which handlers are in fact sending messages to the audit log, which we are capturing. So for instance, the prepare handler, the position handler, and the notification handler are the first three handlers that send those logs. And in the fulfillment phase, we can see the similar picture on the side. So let's have a look at this fulfillment handler, which is in fact message number 3. And we can jump into that successful transfer. Let's go to transfer and let's look at the third message. And we can see that that has been received from the fulfill handler. And if we have a look here, we can see the fulfillment that has been sent through. So it's really powerful to be able to drill down in and have a look under the hood really of Mojaloop in a very easy, relatively easy method of doing that. And that's the real power of this tracing or transfer functionality. It's allowing you to respond to something that's unexpected and really get down to the nitty-gritty quite quickly. So, for instance, let's find a transfer that in fact was aborted. Let's transfer down here, and if we jump in here and have a look at the transfer events, we can quite quickly identify the reason for that failure. So payee transaction limit reached. And there's the error code and there's the error message, and we received that from the transfer, the position handler. Takes a bit of getting used to these messages, but once you do, it's really powerful to have more information than you need, which is great. Okay, so let's trace the transfer functionality. Next, I would like to demonstrate to you how you can go about performing a settlement reconciliation. So let's start by viewing the positions. So in fact, I've got already an open window with some with unsettled position. So let me jump. As part of the ISC deployment of this, we also have the TTK, and here's a view of the mobile simulator that is set up. What I'm going to be doing quickly here is I'm going to perform a transfer between the pink bank and the green bank. Then if I jump back here and I do a refresh, we can see that our positions have now jumped by 100 between pink bank and green bank. So now let's go and close that window. So there is one window that's open at the moment. Let's close that window, and we can select that window. In fact, let's select both of those, and let's proceed to initiate the settlement against that. So let's jump to the settlement view. This is the settlement that's outstanding, and it's now settlement 8. I can now generate the report for settlement 8. So let's have a look at that. Settlement 8. Generate that report, and I can see that we sent money from pink bank to green bank, and in fact that is reflective here, pink bank to green bank. So so pink bank owes green bank some money in order to settle. Now there is a process we can, these reports that have been built up against this are that deployed as part of this are quite versatile and allow you to generate this data in multiple formats. So I'm going to quickly, and JSON's one of those formats. I'm going to quickly convert this to Excel. Then save that file. And that we can then send through to the settlement bank to initiate the settlement, and then when we get our reconciliation bank back from that settlement bank, then we upload that during the finalization process. I don't actually have a file at the moment, and then we could, we can then update that, and that'll help us then complete the settlement and reconciliation. You can see once we've initiated the settlement, there's still an outstanding amount against the pink bank, which is only completed after the settlement is finalized, but the position on the green bank has been reset to 0. From this view, you can enable or disable participants, and you can update the positions by adding to the balance or resetting the net debit cap, using funds in and funds out, and net cap adjustments. Okay, great. Next, I'd like to show you the RBack controls that are in place. So currently I'm logged in as Paul Baker, and I've been assigned 2 standard roles. Now we've built up a set of standard roles. These roles can be adjusted according to your needs, but by default, what we have done is we've provided a view that that lets you start initially without worrying too much about the details, and then you can leave it what's here and then fine tune it to your business processes as what makes sense. Currently, this is the view of the permissions, of the standard permissions that have been assigned, and the standard roles go from operator to manager to clerk to financial manager to a DFSP reconciliation role, and then an audit role. Currently, I've been given a finance manager and manager role, which in fact allows me to do everything possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the financial manager role, and what that will do is it'll prevent me from being able to initiate and finalize a settlement. Let's have a look at that in action. Let's update those roles, and I'm going to remove the financial manager role. And now when I go to settlements, I can go back and send another transfer between pink bank and green bank. Then I can close this window, and then if I try and settle that, I in fact get an error. And if we I should have, let's do that again quickly. Should have opened that beforehand. Initiate settlement. In fact, I've got a 403 forbidden error. So the RBack is implemented in API level, which is considered one of the safer ways of performing RBack enforcement. So next, I'd like to show you how the DFSP controls are. So if we jump here, I'm currently manager roles. One of the things I can do is also view the DFSP reports. The DFSP reconciliation role can only have access to the DFSP reports. But let me just illustrate to you how the participant assignment works. So at the moment, I've been given access to view the settlement reports for Green Bank FSP. So if I jump here to what's our settlement ID? So current settlement ID is 8. So if I can generate this report for settlement 8. If I try and generate that report for the Pink Bank FSP, my access is forbidden. But if I change it to Green Bank FSP, I in fact can generate that report. To show you that it's working, I can quickly revoke that permission and report. I then will not have access to that report. So the next part of this RBack controls is what are the detailed permissions that are associated with each one of these roles. Currently, we've mapped out these permissions, but what happens if you need to change it or you need to add a new report and you want to restrict the permission for that particular report? How do you go about making changes to this set of standard roles and the associated permissions? Well, the way we've done that, we've done a tight integration into the ISC. And if we have a look at this ISC workbench configuration file, we have structures in place that define the BizOps portal users. And we've got structures in place that define the permissions that are associated with each particular role. So these are the permissions that the operator role is provided, and the permissions that the manager role and the clerk, financial manager, DFSP, reconciliation, and audit. Each one of these permissions can be checked in multiple places. If we jump to this view of our BizOps framework, we have permission access on our ORI Oathkeeper gateway. We have a set of Oathkeeper rules, and each rule is associated with a permission check. In addition, our reporting service will check the report itself to see if we've got that report permission, and then also participant access as required. And similarly, the GraphQL reporting service API also has a field-by-field permission check. So what would be required to, let's say, for instance, create a new report and then add that report so that only the clerk operator could generate that report? Well, in building out that report, we would link it to a particular permission and then install it on the system. And then to get that permission added to this clerk role, we would require to branch this in the same way that you would in Git or GitHub. You would do a branch, and then you would make the relevant change, and that change would be associated with your username. And then you would upload a pull request, and there would be a control mechanism about checking the validity of that. And then once that change is pushed, it then gets uploaded here, and then a pipeline gets run against that, which then implements that change and deploys it to your site. So users who need access to control the security need to have permissions and accounts set up in the ISC environment. we can quickly have another view into the second part of that, which is our Oath Keeper roles. And here, let's say, for instance, we've got our report. No, let's go to central settlements, something that maybe all of you are a bit more familiar with. We've got a set of permissions that have been associated with each of the endpoints for a particular type of HTTP method. So this is how new controls can be added or extended to the current UI. It's very accessible and easy through the IC configuration. And that ends my demonstration. Sorry about messing with the view. I didn't mean to get that wrong, obviously. So let's continue with that. I hope you're excited about the work that the teams put together. They certainly really worked hard against that. And in fact, we're talking about the team. This is the team that really made that work. That's Vijay, Kevin, Yevon, Sri, and David Fry. Really, it is still working, fitting all those multiple components together and make sure that they work and it's fairly smooth. I would like to talk a little bit about this segregation of duties enforcement. So the way it's been modeled is a mutually exclusive set of permissions. So that's convenient because you don't need to maintain an exclusive set of pairs because there's opportunity to get that wrong. It's really just you define one set cannot have a permission in the other set. And we've defined it at the lowest level. So this is at the permission level. And then the system itself ensures that it's impossible for a user to ever have a role that crosses the boundaries of these mutually exclusive sets. Now, the example we've got in place here is sort of how you could use it to enforce segregation of duties between an audit role and sort of position funds in and funds out, or NDC adjustments. And in your organization might be really important that a user, that the same person cannot have access to those two permissions. This can be used to enforce maker checker. The example is you would have one maker and a check on the other side. And if you're large enough that you got two different users and you don't ever want the maker and the checker to be the same person, then this is the mechanism you can use to enforce it. Now, some organizations don't work that way, and they don't mind having multiple makers and multiple checkers, and each person can be a maker and a checker, but at a transaction level, they cannot be the same person. And the way that needs to be enforced is at a low level inside sort of the bounded context, where we need to have reference to the transaction that's happening to make sure that the same person makes and checks isn't there. That can't really be enforced by the RBack, but what the RBack's responsibility around that is to make sure that the user information is provided to the backend API, so that in fact that maker checker functionality can be built in if and is it required. So that's the approach that's been taken here. So next I would like to talk about is the community contribution, because I think this is exciting and really as a hub operator, I hope you're going to start feeling empowered, and part of that empowering is we want people who are using this to be able to extend and add in their own functionality, and also members of the community. So what I've done is I've listed three main areas where people can start to contribute, and I certainly hope that ThyssenWorks, who are going to be the first users of this, will in fact start going down this process, but of course it's not limited to them at all. So adding new reports. So creating a new report is really just about SQL statements and permissions and tying them all together. So that's quite an easy way to be able to create functionality that is necessary for running hub operations. And it's an easy place to contribute first. And next is to enhance the micro front ends that are built at the moment. For example, you could extend the settlement UI, improve the UI, or the backend settlement API controls. Obviously, there's a tight correlation between those, and then enhance sort of participant lifecycle controls, etc. Then the next sort of level of contribution would be to create your own micro front end, create it independent. The micro front end mechanism allows it to be developed and deployed independently of other people, and certainly if it's gone in to make sure that the boundary conditions or between the micro front ends sort of don't interfere with each other. So this is really a great mechanism for creating something new and then being able to deploy it. And this could be a custom UI, it could be something that's only each individual scheme needs, but it could also be something that's largely contributing to the offering for the whole community. And we've got a long sort of wish list, and you can certainly start to make your way through the use list as defined down below here. So a little more detailed on how to add new reports. Currently, the mechanism that has been sort of built and designed by Yemen, there's a link here to an example. Really, it's a YAML file that really defines a configuration, and it starts off with a name. It essentially gets loaded as a Kubernetes custom resource, and it really has got details around what that endpoint and parameters look like, and then some queries, sort of where the data is coming from, and then it uses an EJS template to sort of pull those together and produce that all the different formats that are required that can be provided, which is HTML, Excel, and JSON output formats or the common formats. Next, I want to talk about the current reporting sort of micro front ends. They are sitting in repos already in Mojaloop. So contribute. There's no limitation. You can check them out, look at them, branch them, create pull requests, just engage with us and be part of that discussion. And but contributing is certainly there and available. And then the next level is you can create your own. We've got a boilerplate with a whole lot of documentation and information on how to get going in building these micro front ends. Obviously, you need a backend to support that, but Mojaloop does have a standard backend. So to build sort of micro front ends on top of standard Mojaloop backends is definitely possible, and is something that you can quite easily make an impact on. So the beauty in using this micro front end idea is that you don't need to worry about the full system. You just need to worry about the bounds of the micro front end that have been defined. And if you conform to those, then you can plug it into the system and you will get that RBack and the permissions and the supports and the controls that are necessary for that UI extension that you built. And lastly, in this presentation, I've just got some references or resources. So please, if you're interested in this and you want to go to get to it, please review them afterwards. A detailed view of the standard rules that have been deployed at the moment in the ISC. We've got lots of demos, sort of more detailed demos breaking down or talking to each of the concepts that I glanced over today. And then we've got a whole lot of documentation to support this effort. And that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much, Paul. There's lots of thumbs up on the chat section for all the excellent work done. I'll pause and see if there's any questions. I'll give an opportunity to, you can either unmute and ask your question, or you can just type it in the chat. Any questions? All right, seeing none, Paul, thank you so much for excellent work. I see lots of kudos also being given to Thin and the ThesaWorks team that may have contributed to this process. Paul, could you just speak to that a little bit? I'm curious what your interactions were with ThesaWorks folks.
Yes, in fact, exciting. I mean, I hate building things that don't get used, and ThesaWorks allow me to not do that. so we've been working quite closely with ThesaWorks team. And we've got this deployed in the portal, and I really do think it's going to add a lot of value. And I know their needs are great, and we haven't met all of their needs, but certainly I think we are stepping forward with a big step, getting this financial portal version 3 out there, and I'm really excited about sort of where that can take us. You know, in terms of maturity of solution and also the functionality to support the efforts, that the good work that ThesaWorks and the team are doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much, Paul, and for all the others in the community who have contributed to this.